We left off last class and we talked about issues, claims, and arguments. Some of you said you found that helpful in understanding this. And actually it's kind of a side note, but this is, I think, useful information for you. One of the things I do in my lectures that the book doesn't do for you is to focus on the sort of problems that keep coming up for students semester after semester after semester. I've been teaching critical thinking now for, well, not my entire teaching career, but for at least 8 years ago. So I've seen the same kinds of confusions, the same kind of simple mistakes, like confusing an issue with a topic, right? Your book doesn't cover that, I think, because it assumes you know that. But a lot of times, students aren't fully aware of what they know. They do know it in the back of their head, but they're not able to bring it out when they need it. So that's why we work on it here and we drill on it. So last time we talked about claims. Claims are the most basic element of arguments. The most basic thing that you're going to deal with in this class, being able to tell what's a claim, what's not a claim. And you guys were pretty good about that. Now it gets a little trickier, because when it comes to arguments, just to refresh, we had this sort of basic structure. We have some claims, and they're being used to support another claim. And this entire structure is called an argument. And actually there's even a technical word for the process of going from the premises to the conclusion, or the claims that we're getting people to assume or to agree with, and the claims that we're trying to get them to accept, and that's called inference. So when you infer something, you are actually doing something like argumentation. When you are given a bunch of data, and then you draw a conclusion from that data, which all of you are going to have to do in your classes and your careers, right? Actually, you do it anyway. When you're making a decision and you research, let's say you're going to buy a house or a car, you get yourself information, and then you have to draw conclusions. Each conclusion that you're drawing is something that you're inferring from those premises. And we're going to get to this a little bit more in later classes. An argument doesn't work if it only has one premise. Now, often when we make arguments, we only give one premise, but that's because we're assuming that the audience already knows some of the other things that we're hoping that they will agree to. So if I say, it's snowing today, therefore we won't have any class, what am I assuming that you know? Well, that's the conclusion, that we won't have any class. So I'm not assuming that you know that. What am I assuming that you read into it? It's snowing today, we're not going to have class. What bridge is that?
If class is canceled.
Well, that's the conclusion again. See, this is one of those basic confusions that students have.
That the snow is dangerous?
Well, that could be a step along the way. There's a much simpler way to do it. It's snowing today, we won't have any class. What sort of statement can you put there to get from one to the other? If it's snowing, we don't have any class. I'm assuming that you all understand that. And I'm assuming that you understand that because we're here in Fayetteville, in the South, where if it snows, we often don't have class. That's not the case where I come from. You have to have about 6 or 8 or sometimes 10 inches of snow before they're going to cancel class. We're used to driving in snow all the time. But here, this is background knowledge. Here you know that if it snows, FSU typically cancels classes, right? That's something that you're assuming. Those are part of the premises. So you could set up an argument that would run, it's snowing today. If it snows, we don't have class. Therefore, we don't have class. This is a very simple one, right? And we start out with very simple ones so that we can build towards more and more complex ones, the kinds of ones that you'll encounter in real life, like the State of the Union Address. That State of the Union Address is making a number of different arguments. You'll remember last class I ended by saying that you could practice the things that you're learning in this class all the time, anywhere you go, right? Here's an example. President Obama, every time a president makes a State of the Union address, they're not just giving you information, they're making arguments. They're making some claims, and they are hopefully backing up those claims with some things that we can agree on. And then sometimes they'll go one step back. What if somebody doesn't agree with all of the premises? Well, then you have to argue for those as well. That's okay. So one of the things that we want to think about now, this is what an argument is. It's a set of claims where they're connected to each other, and one of the claims is being supported, or at least looks like it's being supported by the other claims. So that's what an argument is. What then is not an argument? Well, if you have just one claim by itself, can that be an argument? Somebody might say, my argument is we need universal health care. That's not an argument. That's just a claim. They have not yet given you any reason to think that that is a true statement. You may already agree with it, but that's just sort of short-circuiting the process of thinking, isn't it? Somebody who offers you something that's a controversial claim, you probably want to see whether it's actually true or not. See whether there's any reasons to believe it. That's part of being an educated person. That's part of being a critical thinker. When you arrive here in college, there are many things which you believe which are false. There'll be many beliefs along the way that people introduce you to that will be false as well. How do you know? Until you see whether somebody can make an argument for them, and whether that's a good argument. Could be that we do need universal health care. Until you've actually looked at the arguments for it, you don't know. If somebody just makes claims to you, you should give me some money. I hope you don't accept that claim right off the bat, with no argumentation. You know, do you? If you do, then give me some money. I'll take it. And I'll use it for good purposes, right? So a single claim by itself can't be an argument. Again, very common mistake students make. Not so much in class by itself, but when they're writing papers. When they are, oh jeez. There we go. It's trying to update all sorts of things. Students make this sort of mistake when they're trying to write papers, when they're looking at other people's claims. They get a little bit careless. They think that anything that's out there is an argument. It's only an argument if it has this structure. So what if we have a bunch of claims all thrown together, but there's no one single claim that's being backed up by the other claims? It's not enough to just jumble up a bunch of words to have an argument. People do this sometimes. As a matter of fact, one of the fallacies that we're going to look at later in the semester, fallacy is a bad type of arguing. One of the fallacies consists of just jumbling up a bunch of claims together that don't have anything to do with each other, pretending like they do. What sort of things might this be like? Well, you know, when somebody's telling a story. You know, yesterday I went and gave a lecture at the Cumberland County Library Bordeaux branch. It was 6 o'clock when I got there. I used the flip cam to record it. The lecture was well attended, but no FSU people showed up, meaning my colleagues. I didn't expect any of you to show up. We had good question and answer. I enjoyed myself a lot. Do we have an argument there at all? No. We have a lot of claims, and we could rearrange them to become an argument. You could ask me, how do you know no FSU people were there? And I might say something like, Well, you know, I was giving the lecture, so I was looking at the audience, and I know who the FSU people are, and none of them were in that audience. What am I doing? I'm giving you premises now, and it leads to a conclusion. So it's very important to be able to see. You have to have this structure. If you don't have a conclusion, you don't have an argument. And a conclusion by itself is not a conclusion. A conclusion by itself is just an isolated claim. So, a bunch of things all jumbled up together, not an argument yet. Another thing that your book talks about is the difference between, this is on page 12 and 13, difference between arguments and explanations. This is a little bit trickier. I'm going to erase this for the time being. And we'll bring it back a little bit later. Explanations are something that are not an argument. Let's say we take that case again of giving the lecture, no FSU people were in the audience. You say, Dr. Sadler, how did you know that? And I say, well, you know, I looked out in the audience and I didn't recognize any people from FSU there. There we have an argument, right? I made a claim. You asked me, Dr. Sadler, how can you back that claim up? And I gave you some support for it. I gave you some further claims. Those were premises. Why did no FSU people show up? Now you're not asking for an argument. You're asking for an explanation, aren't you? Now, one of the things I want to clue you into, both arguments and explanations will use one word in common that leads students to confuse them very easily. Because. All right? Arguments and explanations will use this in different ways. An argument is looking for you to, make the case that whatever it is you want to argue for. The president gave a good speech. The president gave a bad speech. If you take if you take a side on that, and somebody says, "Why do you think that?" They're asking you for an argument. Now, that would be if they disagree with you. They want you to make a case. They could also be asking you why, as in, well, why do you think that? Why do you have that opinion? I'm not worried about whether you're right or wrong. I just want to understand. You've heard things like that before, right? Oftentimes when we actually get in arguments, not in the sense that we're using it here, but arguments where we're yelling at each other and fighting, and then they send you to counseling together. What does the counselor say? I just want to hear both sides, or mediators, or whoever. I just want to understand. Understanding is about explanation. And explanation is looking for why. Tell me why something is the case. Why didn't any FSU people show up? Well, I can think of some explanations. And this is something actually that we're going to look at later in the semester. How do you figure out what's a good explanation, what's not a good explanation? I personally, at first I thought, when I saw that nobody showed up, I thought, it's because FSU people don't support each other. And then I started thinking about it a little bit more, and I thought, I'm totally busy. I barely have time to keep my head above water and get the things on Blackboard for you guys and keep up with all my committee work and do all the special projects that I'm assigned to. And I don't even have any kids down here. A lot of my colleagues have kids that they have to keep track of and drive around and all that sort of stuff. Well, that makes sense. That makes sense out of that thing that we want to explain. See, what an explanation does is makes sense out of something. It helps you understand it. It doesn't make the case that something is the case. When do you need an argument? When somebody doesn't accept what you're saying. When do you need an explanation? They might accept what you're saying, they just don't fully understand it. Do you guys see the difference between these? Now, seeing the difference between these is not the same thing as being able to actually distinguish them apart from each other in real life circumstances easily. So let's actually look over here. We can't see it on the camera, but we have it in transcript form from National Public Radio. Let me see if I can get this. Okay, so speech starts off, and it always starts off with, talking to people. And is this first part an argument? Tonight I want to begin by congratulating the men and women of the 112th Congress, as well as your new speaker, John Boehner. I hear different people pronouncing it different ways. And as we mark this occasion, we're also mindful of the empty chair in this chamber, and we pray for the health of our colleague and our friend, Gabby Giffords. Applause. That's, what took place there. It's a transcript. Is there an argument there yet? Why not? He's not actually even explaining so much. He's introducing, this is sort of ceremonial language. It means something, but it doesn't mean, here's a claim, I want you to accept it, I'm going to defend it, or anything like that. But that will come. Looks like I will have to shrink this back to let's look at the next sentence. It's no secret that those of us here tonight have had our differences over the last 2 years. The debates have been contentious. We've fought fiercely for our beliefs. And that's a good thing. That's what a robust democracy demands. That's what helps sets us apart as a nation. Now, in that passage, you notice it's one paragraph. There's more than one thing going on. That's good that some of you marked that. Is there an argument? Can you see an argument there? Where some claim is being advanced and then some other claims are being given as support for it. There is an argument there.
The beliefs?
Beliefs is just a word, so that can't be a claim. Claim has to be a whole sentence with subject and verb. And an argument is going to be a set of claims.
And our differences over the past 2 years.
That's a claim.
The robust, what democracy demands then?
Another claim. That one is actually a premise. We could, and I will chart this out for you on the board. What is that actually supporting? Why is he saying that's what a robust democracy demands?
The differences.
Look at the passage.
Is it we fought fiercely for our beliefs?
What is the point that he's making that that's what a robust democracy demands?
Set us apart as a nation.
Yeah, that's going to lead to the main claim. I'll give you a hint. It's the shortest sentence in there. Yeah. That's a good thing because that's what a robust democracy demands. Because that's what helped set us apart as a nation. You want to get yourself in the habit, when you're looking at these things, of asking, what is the most basic claim that other things are supporting? If there's an argument there will be a most basic claim. You have to be attentive readers when you're looking at anything that has arguments. The ordering by itself won't necessarily give you that. So, and here's that schema, argument. And an argument has premises and a conclusion. And in the case of this one, the conclusion is, that's a good thing. What does he mean by that? He means the stuff that he's talking about now earlier. We've had our differences, that we fought fiercely for our beliefs. So what is a good thing? I'm going to use brackets here because that's the way we show that we're not using the exact same words. Let's say strong debate. Strong debate is a good thing. It's lucky he thinks that because there's an awful lot of it, isn't there? There always is. There's never been a time in American politics where everybody agreed. from the beginning. So, strong debate is a good thing. Why is it a good thing? He's not asking you for, here he's not asking you for an explanation. Or you're not asking him for one. He's backing it up with some things. A robust democracy demands strong debate. That's being given as support, isn't it? That leads you to this conclusion. A robust democracy demands strong debate. Therefore, what else? That's what helps sets us apart as a nation. I'm going to abbreviate a little bit. Now, if that's the case, what are these other sentences doing? Are they part of the argument? Not really. They're giving you information, aren't they? Background information that helps you make sense of the argument. It's no secret that those of us here tonight have had our differences over the last 2 years. He's setting the stage. He's giving you information. The debates have been contentious. We fought fiercely for our beliefs. That's a good thing. That's what a robust democracy demands. That's what helps sets us apart as a nation. So the argument is really only the second half of that. Now, this isn't something that I've expected you to study yet at this point, but I'd like you to think about this. Do you accept this premise? Robust democracy demands strong debate. Think back maybe to your civics class, or your American history class, or whatever. Whatever social science class you had, or social studies. What does democracy mean? All of you know this because you all had it many times as elementary, middle, high school students. What is a democracy?
A party system where you have 2 or 3 different parties that have different beliefs.
Well, you don't. It's not necessarily that you have a party system, because you can have a.
It's run by everybody.
Yeah, run by everybody in what sense? Because right now the Democrats don't feel like they're running the show, even though they have the president, because the House of Representatives is Republican now. Who runs things in a democracy? The people, we often say that, but which people in particular actually get to run things?
The ruling party.
The people who are actually voted in. That's how it's different than a dictatorship, or an oligarchy, or a communist state, or a fascist state, or all the other different possibilities that there are out there. And the only way a democracy really works well is if there's a lot of debate. I mean, if we don't want debate, we can just elect somebody ruler for life and then have them decide everything, right? What's the point in having debate? Well, you get to, air a lot of ideas and then see which ones are the best ideas. And how do you tell whether they're good ideas or not in a democracy? Well, you see who votes for them. Not always the best way, by the way, to tell if it's a good idea or not. Because most people, if there are certain appeals you can make. You can say, how would all of you like to get $1,000 extra every year without having to earn it? Let's vote on that. Most of you would vote for it, right? Probably wouldn't be a good measure to do, because someone would have to pay for that, right? And then when you get the bill, then you'd start saying, oh, I don't think this was such a good idea in the first place. Now I got $1,000, but they took $1,000 more out. But we have debate about things. There's some assumptions built in here. You notice we just unpacked some of them. Is having all these debates, is that part of what sets us apart as a nation? Maybe he's talking about having a strong democracy. It's not clear in that sentence, is it? What sets us apart as a nation. Does that set us apart as a nation? Think to what you know about other countries. If you're not able to answer these sort of questions, that's a sign that your education has not prepared you for college at this point. If you don't know enough about American democracy and foreign countries, there's some gaps, and you're going to want to fill those in. Because when you get in the workplace, you're going to need to know a lot about a lot of different things. So if you're struggling with this right now, and it's not just that you're shy, if you really don't have any answers for these things, you have a lot of work to do. Because if you want to make sense out of these things, you have to have the background knowledge, don't you? This is just the first paragraph of the major speech that was given by our president. If you want to be a critical thinker, you have to be able to take that sort of thing, sit down with it, and be able to process it like that. That's what a college education is supposed to signify, that you can do that. So, word of the wise. What assumptions are being made here? Do we want to have a democracy? Do you?
Yeah.
Why?
More based on the people.
We're based on the people, but so, yeah.
You have a little bit more say than, for instance, in a dictatorship or something like that.
Yeah, okay. There's an explanation. Now notice what I asked for there. I didn't ask for an argument, I asked for an explanation. Why do you think that? Yeah, you have a little bit more say in what your life is going to be like in a democracy. In mainland China, which is our big strategic rival, many people don't get to decide what they're going to do in life. It's decided for them, and it's decided pretty early. That's a different model of society. There's no necessity that we do things our way. Could be 20 years from now that we're going to do things their way. They're not a democracy. We are. Though the European countries are. Japan is. Quite a few of the other, countries in the third world are democracies. Sometimes they're working, sometimes they're not. There's a big assumption here that he's expecting Americans to share, that we want democracy, that democracy is a good thing. You have to build that in to get to this conclusion, that strong debate is a good thing. Do they think that in every other country? Strong debate is a good thing. If you engage in strong debate in China, you may find yourself in a prison camp.
Or dead.
What's that?
Or dead.
Or dead, or you may have to be exiled to the United States. Strong debate is not tolerated in a lot of cases, but it is in our political system. That's all built into this first paragraph. So you notice we're dealing with arguments already from the start. Let's go on a little bit further, and then we'll look at some more issues about arguments. Sets us apart as a nation. Let's see if we can find some good explanations. There's a lot of arguments built in here. Here he's making a case. We have to do more. Okay, let's look at this passage. Many people watching tonight can probably remember a time when finding a good job meant showing up in a nearby factory or business downtown. You didn't always need a degree, and your competition was pretty much limited to your neighbors. If you worked hard, chances are you'd have a job for life with a decent paycheck and good benefits and the occasional promotion. Maybe you'd even have the pride of seeing your kids work at the same company. Argument there? Ask yourself that. See a few heads shaking. If you actually understand today's material, if you've done adequate preparation for class, this should be very easy for you to say, no, it's not an argument. Right? This is a narrative. He's not actually. This could be an explanation. You know, maybe if the question is, how did people think about things in the past? He could be explaining that. He's not actually saying, let me tell you how people used to think about it in the past. Here's how it is. He's assuming that everybody understands and knows this. May not be a great assumption too, because for you younger people, this has never been the case in your lifetime, has it? That you can just show up at a place and there's a job. And it will never be the case in your lifetime, that you can just show up and there will be a job. It's going to be very high competition. Let's look at what he says after that. That world has changed, and for many the change has been painful. I've seen it in the shuttered windows of once booming factories and the vacant storefronts on once busy main streets. I've heard it in the frustrations of Americans who've seen their paychecks dwindle or their jobs disappear. Proud men and women who feel like the rules have been changed in the middle of the game. It's very powerful rhetoric, isn't it? And by rhetoric, I don't necessarily mean it's false or anything like that. I just mean it appeals to the emotions very well. That world has changed, and for many the change has been painful. Those are, notice, two different issues. Remember when we talked about issues? Has the world changed? That's an issue. Has the change been painful? That's another issue. They're connected together. So now he's changing subjects, isn't he? When you're changing issues, you're shifting the subject slightly. I've seen it in the shuttered windows of the once booming factories and the vacant storefronts. Is he making an argument here, do you think? He could be if somebody actually is making the case that the world hasn't changed. Do you think anybody's making that case these days? Probably not. There may be a few older people who are out of the workforce and they say, I don't know what's wrong with these kids. Back in my day, you just get a job and work hard and blah, 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 blah. But that's because they're not part of the mainstream conversation. All of you know that it's tough, isn't it? It's tough even to get entry-level jobs these days. That world has changed. What he's doing here again is he's giving you a nice story. But a story is not yet an argument. It's a narrative. It's a different kind of speech. Let's look at the next passage then. They're right. They're right about what? Proud men and women who feel like the rules have changed in the middle of the game. They're right. The rules have changed. In a single generation, revolutions in technology have transformed the way we live, work, and do business. Steel mills that once needed 1,000 workers can now do the same job with 100. Today, just about any company can set up shop, hire workers, and sell their products wherever there's an internet connection. Here he's not just telling a story, isn't he? What's he doing now? He's not making an argument yet.
Just telling you how to do it.
Yeah, I erased explanation. He's giving you an explanation, isn't he? He's telling you, how did the rules change? What do you mean when you say the rules have changed? He's giving you now some explanation of what he means. In a single generation, revolutions in technology have transformed the way we live, work, and do business. That's an explanation for what sort of changes. He goes on. Meanwhile, nations like China and India have realized with some changes of their own they could compete in this new world. And so they started educating their children earlier and longer with greater emphasis on math and science. They're investing in research and new technologies. Just recently, China became home to the world's largest private solar research facility and the world's fastest computer. So what's going on here? Argument, story, explanation. What do you think?
I think he's building up to the argument to get.
You're right. He is building up to his argument. This is all part of one big argument. Oftentimes, arguments are not so straightforward and simple as this. They're part of a larger structure. And explanations can be part of that. Nations like India realized with some changes of their own they could compete in this new world. And so they started educating their children earlier and longer. So far he's telling you a story. Then he starts telling you what they do. Greater emphasis on math and science, investing in research and new technologies. Gives you some examples. He is building towards an argument. Here is the argument. Yes, the world has changed. All that stuff that he's saying, now you can see, fits into a bigger picture, doesn't it? He was trying to make that point. And why is he trying to make that point? Well, he's going to say a bit more. The competition for jobs is real, but this shouldn't discourage us. It should challenge us. Now, is that a claim that everybody's going to agree with? So that should tell you. When you see somebody making a claim that other people are probably not going to all agree with, you should start thinking, is there an argument here? How's he going to back this up? Then you should start looking for arguments. The world has changed, the competition for jobs is real, but it shouldn't discourage us. It should challenge us. So now look at what he says after this. Remember, for all the hits we've taken these last few years, for the naysayers predicting our decline, America still has the largest, most prosperous economy in the world. No workers are more productive than ours. No country has more successful companies or grants more patents to investors and entrepreneurs. We're the home to the world's best colleges and universities where more students come to study than any place on earth. Okay, here's an argument. This is an argument. So let's see if we can sort of reconstruct it. It shouldn't discourage us. What's the claim he's saying? He's not just saying it shouldn't discourage us. It should challenge us. The change should challenge us. And why should it challenge us instead of discouraging us? I mean, we could get discouraged. Are any of you discouraged? Yes? You know, this bright new world that he's talking about, it doesn't exist everywhere equally. It exists less here in Fayetteville than it does in Raleigh, doesn't it? Where all the biotech stuff used to be. And where there are bigger universities, you know, the big universities, the world's best colleges and universities where students come to study more than any other place on earth. That describes some places better than other places, doesn't it? But let's see where his argument is going. So what is he actually giving you? Here's our conclusion. What is he giving as premises? He's giving you, if I count, 4. Look at the argument that's up there. And
The
see.
most prosperous economy in the world?
Yes, there's one premise.
No workers are more productive than all?
And most prosperous country. No workers are more productive.
I think it
No
is
more successful companies?
grants, answers.
Yeah,
Grants, patents, inventors.
that's all part. Yeah, that's all
I
part of
think
the same
they have a
thing.
good one when they talk about.
No country has more successful companies or grants more patents. Well, those could be 2 separate things. No country has more successful companies.
Best college university.
Yeah, so I can actually get this done. Let's skip ahead to, we have the best colleges and universities.
More students.
Okay, so we actually have 4 different reasons being given, and they're all sort of thrown together. And we often do this for a reason. Let's say somebody doesn't accept this. You know, they don't accept the premise that we are the most prosperous country in the world. Well, then maybe they'll accept these other ones. Or maybe this is actually being used sort of as a middle point in the argument, and I'll show you how to do that in later classes. Maybe these premises right here are actually backing this up, why we're the most prosperous country, and that is giving you the reason why we should feel challenged instead of discouraged. No workers are more productive. That might be true. Depends on how you measure it. No country has more successful companies. That's a true statement. We are actually still the largest economy on earth. We have the best colleges and universities. You know, it depends on how you want to measure it. Some people might say that, you know, the Sorbonne or Oxford are better than you know, Harvard or Yale or, you know, things like that. But if you look at it as an aggregate, we sure have a lot of colleges and universities compared to other places. Other places, they're almost all state-run. And, you know, in France, Germany, places like that, not everybody gets to go to college. Here we open it up to anybody who wants to go. You can't go everywhere you want, you know. It depends on your grades and your aptitude. But, you know, in Germany and France, not everybody goes. You take a test, and if you're not smart enough, you're not part of that 15% who get to go. You have to go to trade school or something like that. So maybe these are reasons for you. He's talking to you, by the way, in this speech. He's not just talking to those who have power. He's talking to everybody, including young Americans who are trying to figure out what they're doing with their lives and are currently in college and wondering what's going to happen. He's trying to offer you reasons not to be discouraged. Now, we'll end this class. Let me ask you, and I'm being completely forthright here. I don't know the answer to this. Do you find any of this to be good reasons why you should not be discouraged but feel challenged instead? I see a lot of shaking heads. Why not? Here I'm looking for an explanation. I'm not looking for you to make a case.
I just don't see a lot of the points as valid.
In what sense?
In the sense of strong enough to
Okay.
make me buy that point. I agree with it.
So you
but
agree with the premises?
I agree with the conclusion.
Oh, you do? You do?
I would take a different route. Those aren't reasons I would choose to get there.
Okay, well this is interesting. You can make, this brings us to a good point. You can make the same argument, you can make the same conclusion with different premises. So, what she's talking about is maybe these aren't the best premises to do that with. So, think about this in the time that we have until you come to next class. And work on the material for the next stuff. We're going to start going into more complicated, more tricky material. And I'll see all of you on Friday.